some extent, to fill the gaps left in Australian publishing, because the big houses let bypass a colossal number of magnificent manuscripts every year, both in fiction and in non-fiction. And Indra Publishing in Melbourne is one of the small publishers who try to keep Australian writing represented on our bookshop shelves, because like Australian music, Australian writing is very much under threat by cheaper imported products. Quite apart from the book as a book, I was very pleased that Janis sent me her manuscript, because one of the things I like about non-fiction works which come to my desk, books which I judge to have some social value, and I'm very aware that the intense personal stories told in Janis's work is tragically repeated in Australian families, both rural and metropolitan, far, far too much in increasing years. I want to introduce Megan, who is far better placed than I to talk about this unfortunate social phenomenon, or whatever Megan wishes to speak of. Megan is the Executive Director of Mental Health Foundation of Australia, and I won't claim to be aware of the statistics, but I know that a lot of the youth suicide in Australia has a relationship with mental health. Megan has been actively engaged in community mental health education, health promotion and illness prevention in Australia, and period in Scotland for 5 years, since 1978. Megan has just mentioned to me that her main thing in life is to promote well-being, a feeling of wellness in life, to celebrate life, to enjoy living. And rather than bore you with my interpretation of Megan, I introduce you to Megan.
I'm actually very pleased to be here tonight. I've actually heard Jeff this afternoon on radio speaking specifically about men's mental health. It's an area that I've been particularly interested in for probably the last 10 years. We've managed the reform in mental health in Australia, but one group that consistently miss out are men. Men choose not to be aware of their mental health. It's much more macho to ignore those things that connect us to one another, those things that actually make us feel pain. The other thing that Jeff said today on the radio, and I hadn't spoken to him about this, but I did hear it, that doctors, and I hadn't really thought this one through, doctors actually don't have the connectedness with their GPs that women do. Women start seeing GPs in early teens, maybe linked to menstrual issues, a whole range of issues that women actually choose to go and see a doctor for. Boys, men don't do that. They like to be seen to be strong and not necessarily needy. We need to change that, and I'm so pleased to see so many men here tonight. One of the major statistics in youth suicide, not just youth suicide, suicide in Australia today, is that young men in their late teens, early 20s, but also men past retiring age, are the highest group of successful suicidees in this country. It's an issue we really need to be very careful of, we need to consistently look at, and I'd ask you all, as men and women, to actually think seriously about looking after our men. Our men are actually usually the people who are engaged in violence, they're the people we send off to war. They're the boys that we bring up and say, well, don't cry, you know, you're a boy, you can get over that. It's important that boys know how to cry, know how to feel pain, and know how to express it, and talk to one another and to their partners and the women in their lives. I think Janis was very fortunate that she had a son who did speak to her of pain. She felt his pain. That's not what I actually started out to say, but it came to mind, and it sort of is really crucial that we actually focus on those things in our lives. Now, I actually believe in the absolute right of every individual to take their lives. fairly sort of provocative thing to say, particularly in a book launch where we're talking about death by suicide. It's the last and only real right that we have in the world. That right is ours only if there are provisos set. And a couple of those are that A, the individual is not experiencing depression. The thing is that suicide in Australia right now, in fact it's suicide the world over, people will have an untreated depression. They very often have actually seen a doctor in the last 6 weeks of their life, and it's not necessarily been picked up. So the person must be in full control of their emotions if they're actually seriously thinking about dying. They must be fully informed of their options available to retain and continue their lives. We don't provide that to people who are suicidal or thinking about suicide today. We tell them to be quiet, keep it to yourself. Talk to a doctor about it, but we don't encourage people to speak openly about what's happening and why they're thinking about suicide. And we also need to make sure that it is arranged that no one else is going to suffer lifelong pain as a result of finding that person dead, very often in very unpleasant circumstances. My experiences of suicide, or those that have affected me closely because I deal with suicide quite regularly, started when I was 16, and a friend's parent, a mother, who had an irreparable congenital spinal disease. And she had one of the first operations in Australia to actually insert stainless steel vertebrae in her back. She knew that she would have a 50-50 chance of actually being well after that operation, and in fact it didn't succeed. She had 2 daughters who were my age. She very carefully organised transfer of funds, everything to be set up so that nobody would be in the house when she suicided and she died. We came home and found her at home. That was a shock, but also it was almost a reprieve for her and for her family, who actually argued day in, day out who was going to be the next person to wash her, who was going to look after her. They loved her incredibly, but they were both, the daughters were both of an age where they wanted to get out and enjoy life and felt the pressure of actually having a mother who was constantly in need of their care. My friend Ruth, who died a couple of years ago, and I'm still very angry at, I loved Ruth very dearly. She was my friend in Scotland. We actually met in Australia, and we lived together for a while in Scotland when I first went there. She suicided because life was becoming unbearable for her. She had depression that had been going on for something like 20 years. She had a daughter who was 12, who actually found her one day having taken an overdose of tablets. Ruth was revived and died the next day using a car out in the back blocks of Glasgow, actually. I'm still very angry and upset about her because she left a daughter in very, very unhappy circumstances. Brian was a volunteer who worked with us for probably 3.5 years. Brian had finished his medical degree. He had 6 months to go before he would have finished his med science degree, and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Brian's life virtually finished at that stage. He provided volunteer support to a range of agencies. We had an office at Camberwell Station, and Camberwell Station, if you know, has a loud tannoy. So Brian would sit in our library stirring his coffee 3 times this way and 3 times this way, and it was always in the same cup, and it had the same scratching noise from the ceramics, and I can still hear it. Brian heard his own voices that came with the schizophrenia, his own hallucinations, but he couldn't differentiate those very often between those and the tannoy voices that he had heard coming from Camberwell Station. If you can imagine wearing a pair of earphones, what they call earphones? Earmuffs. Well, no, earphones. With a radio going day in, day out, constantly, 24 hours a day, and try to carry on conversations, carry on your love life, carry on your daily work, carry on everything else that goes on, whilst you've got this constant noise, people telling you to do things happening in your head. Imagine, that can be just one experience of schizophrenia. Brian had that day in, day out. Brian was looking really happy, having told me a couple of times that he'd been going to football with his friends, and he hadn't done that for years. He was going out to clubs at night. This had been going on for about 4 or 5 weeks. And then Brian disappeared. year. My mother phoned me a couple of days later and said, well, Brian had been found dead. I should have actually picked up on Brian telling me the classic ways people die. They start, when you're thinking about suicide, you often start to feel happy about knowing that you're going to be relieved, and your life starts to take on a new meaning. Brian was lying about seeing his friends because his friends well and truly fell off when he first became ill, and certainly didn't take up again just before he died. But he was making us feel better about ourselves as well, trying to. The daughter of a work colleague hanged herself, having had a recent diagnosis of bipolar disorder. She hanged herself because her father had had a lifetime of bipolar. She was the daughter of somebody who had suffered for a very long time, who had made their lives quite uncomfortable from time to time. He would be high and really good fun and enjoyable, and then he would be miserable and really depressed and create really a life of hell for their family. She didn't want to go through that. And my daughter has not suicided, but she tried. I found my daughter one night having taken an overdose of medication. She was the victim of incestuous sexual violence and abuse. She had taken an overdose. We took her to hospital in time and she was had a stomach pump. But not very long after that, she actually also vanished for a year. And I didn't know in that year whether she would ever. That was also the year of her 21st birthday. And if you look back in the Herald Sun and the Age at that time, we actually ran an ad saying "Happy Birthday, Naomi." That was feeling horrific, not knowing whether she was alive, whether she was dead. She came back right on a bushy tail, but it had taken a year. That was feeling horrific. There are sometimes it's pretty awful not knowing whether somebody actually has died and you're not aware of that death. There's no resolution. It's much better if people actually don't suicide and feel suicide because of their lack of comfort within the community. It's much better if people feel connected. We need to make sure that we talk to one another, that we talk to our families. To make sure that people do feel connected, particularly young people who are at risk. And we know who those young people are. But if someone's feeling a bit withdrawn, if they're cut off, if they're acting aggressively, if they're acting strangely, it's important that you ask why, that we know why. That's all the bad stories, and I'm sorry. The Mental Health Foundation of Australia, I'm really proud to actually work for and to work with for a very long time, because it has brought about changes in how we talk about mental health issues. There's no way in the world that this group of people would have been standing here 20 years ago when I first started talking about suicide, talking about a book being released about suicide and about living with death. That just wouldn't have happened. People would have been too frightened to be seen publicly to do it, and we certainly wouldn't have had publishers being keen to actually publish literature about death and dying. The Foundation's here specifically to assist people to understand mental illness, to bring people out to talk about mental illness, but it's also there to actually talk about mental health. One of our focuses is actually on helping understand how we nourish and look after ourselves as well as each other. One of our main roles is also to remove the stigma, and I said a few moments ago you wouldn't have been here 20 years ago and you wouldn't have been. The stigma would have been too great, it wouldn't have come out. The stigma associated with mental illness means that people don't access work and education, those things that we take for granted. If work and education were available in shorter periods of time, if workplaces were actually set up in such a way that a person could come and work for 2 or 3 hours a day and not continue if they needed to because they were feeling unwell, that person would feel connected. They would come and go as they needed to. We need to actually have places, and things are being established. And this is Mental Health Week. I noticed today that there is a group in Footscray that are going to set up a cleaning service that specifically is there for people with mental illness, and it will work in such a way that people can come and go as they need to. people might be expecting a decent income. If you have a mental illness, you can jolly well expect that A, your education is likely to stop, your work life will probably stop, and you certainly will probably end up with a long-term, very poor income. You should be entitled to the love of a girlfriend or boyfriend. That the first or the second relationship might come and go, but doesn't need to be seen to be the end just because there's a mental illness. Certainly if you have a mental illness, you might be less easy to love. It might be much more difficult to actually hear what you're saying, to understand what you're saying, and to actually feel loved by somebody who has a mental illness because there's a withdrawal. That person has a right to be loved and cared for. It's important to be able to have fun, move away from your family and the long-term emotional dependency that you sort of see as a part of a family, and very often that's there because you have a mental illness. Particularly young people find it very difficult to go out and have fun, to go to clubs, to play sport, to join clubs, partly because of the lack of income, but also the feeling of being unable necessarily to mix and share with others. And it's important for people with a mental illness to feel that they can be a friend. Again, there's a withdrawal and not necessarily a capacity to actually give as easily. So the rest of the community needs to be aware of that and actually help the individual to do that. We need to avoid the situations where people feel the need to suicide because there isn't anything else. The Mental Health Foundation Victoria, and I was going to say a bit about both organisations. Foundation Australia was set up quite specifically. It has to provide information about mental illness, provide information about mental health, and also to destigmatise mental illness, as I just said. The Victorian branch has actually established most of the support groups for mental illness throughout Australia. They started here and grew nationally. Some started in Sydney, but most of them came out of here. We still accommodate the mood disorder support group, which is there quite specifically for family members and for people suffering mood disorders, so depression. And I should say that with schizophrenia, there is often a concomitant depression that is not necessarily always picked up. Those things are sort of suck your lifeblood or sap your lifeblood. We also run the telephone information resource and referral service, which is there to quite specifically provide family and friends and sufferers of mental illnesses information about the best resources that are available. Yesterday was World Mental Health Day. I have to say they also go out of the Mental Health Foundation in Australia and Victoria. We started Mental Health Week, and internationally the World Federation for Mental Health decided they wanted to run something similarly to ours and decided to run it in conjunction with our... The other thing that we actually have been focusing on in the last couple of months, and just in the last 4 weeks, Ryan's mission to federal government, which is that stack with brain power. We're working on health promotion and prevention programs for young people, specifically starting prior to that transition period. Their bodies are changing, their minds are changing, they're starting to become aware of their opposite sex. Life can be very, very different. We want to get to those kids at this age and teach them resiliency, teach them how to be self-confident, teach them how to be self-esteem, teach them the ways to actually ask for help and to talk to one another and family members, so that when problems actually arise, they can be dealt with early on, rather than leave them until they become major issues. We know that actually with most mental illnesses, if we treat it early, we can expect to have some very positive outcomes and carry on very comfortable lives. If it's not treated early, you can find all sorts of problems. So I'd ask you to have the brochures on the table. I'm not going to go on with that anymore, and ask perhaps Janis to now address you, now that I've actually filled you with horror. Now you're going to take issues. Thank you.
in there. Get in there. Get in.
I think that will stay up. Oh dear. Somebody asked me tonight, was I excited? And I said, no, I'm very calm, but I don't think I am. As I look around at all of you here tonight, I feel a communal hug, a really warm communal hug, and I thank you so much for being here. You have all been invited, 99% of you. The other 1% must be riffraff, because you have been part of this journey with me. Your hugs, your kisses, your words of wisdom these last nearly 7 years and even your silence when you didn't know what to say, which is understandable, have given me such comfort and such strength you'll never know how much. The writing of this book came about when my son Jason took his life. I'm the sort of person that finds solace in the written word, and so apart from you wonderful people, I needed more, so I went searching for words that would help me endure, and I could find nothing. Even online I could find nothing. I remember I went to Reading's bookstore in Carlton about 2 months after Jace died, and I asked the sales girl there to print out anything and everything she had on suicide. And so she busily hit the computer and out came 3 or 4 A4 size pages on books on suicide, but they were all psychobabble. There was nothing that that I could relate to. And I started to think, well, there's so many other people out there. If there's at least 2,000 or more suicides a year, and there's 10 people directly affected at the very least, that's 20,000 people, and where are they getting their comfort from if they need it from words? Just months after Jace left us, my writerly friends, Jenny Mooney, put your hand up, Jenny, please, thank you. Jenny Mooney, Jan Stumbles, I'm not sure is here tonight, and Gabrielle Daly, who's now living in Singapore, insisted, I think for my sanity, that our writing sessions continue. We used to workshop, we're RMIT students. And so we'd meet at a Carlton restaurant on a Saturday morning, and instead of reams and reams of words, half of which were probably crap, but I used to produce all these words for them to workshop, all I could muster were fragmented lines. And these wonderful friends of mine rubbed my back as I mourned my son with limited words. Words that became poems and eventually became the springboard for this story, Living Death. I did my hat to you, ladies. And now I want to thank some other artists who have been instrumental in helping me get this book out there. To my publisher, Ian Fraser of Indra Publishing, who contradicts totally, absolutely totally, what I'd been informed at school and what I'd come to fear a publisher could be. Ian's been fantastic. He respects an artist's creative endeavours, and you can't ask for anything more. Thank you, Ian. To Andrew Bartlett, who designed the book cover, and which truly I think captures the mood of the writing. To Stephen Mooney, where are you? There you are. Put your hand up. Thank you. Who did more than design the invitation. A wonderful artist with such enthusiasm and generosity of spirit. Thank you, Stephen. To Megan McDonald, where are you, Megan? Thank you, she's there. Very shy, Megan. She's a consummate professional and she designed my website. Thank you, Megan. To Lynette McDonald, who's actually the mother-in-law of Megan, with whom I often share the joys and tribulations and the anguish of being a writer. And to my youngest boys, Heath and Adam, who just aren't here tonight, I mean my biggest night of nights, but they did say to me about 9 months ago, we're going overseas, Mum, and we're not going to be here for your launch, and does it really matter that much? And of course it doesn't matter. Of course it doesn't matter. Heath's working in London and plans to be there for a year, it looks like 2 years now, we will see him shortly, hopefully. And Adam's touring around Europe spending the deposit he saved for a house. I'll get over it. Where's Peter with the camera? I just want to talk to Heath and Adam for a minute because they'll be getting a copy of this video. It's you, Heath and Adam, apart from a friend, who gave me a reason to continue. And I not only desperately love you, but I'm so very proud of how you both handled a tragedy that no brother should ever experience. I love you both. I love you. Love to my husband. And love to my husband, who is always a constant in my life. A great constant. We made it through the toughest of times, Francis, didn't we? I don't know how we did it. I'm starting to sound like a newly crowned beauty queen, I know. But there's one more person I want to thank. Can you hear me, Dad?
Yeah.
Where are you? Put your hand up. Where are you, Dad?
You want him to fall down?
I want to thank you, my darling Dad. You stayed the distance until I got published. And lastly, to my beautiful son, Jason, who gave so much during his lifetime. He taught me the difference between good and bad love. Oh, well, did he what? He showed me what courage and what loyalty really is. Even after death, he continued giving me gifts, in particular, unequivocal knowledge that there is an afterlife and that he is at peace. That is not a good enough excuse to leave us, Jason, as you did. Mental illness will affect 1 in 5 Australians sometime during their life, whether briefly or lasting. We must educate our young to understand the darkest steps mental illness can take us, and to know that mental illness can be managed. And to those witnessing mental illness, to not be afraid of extending support. It is an illness that is not contagious. Now, as is the norm, I'm told, at a launch, and I've done lots of them as you know, I'm to do a reading, so I decided to read you 3 very short poems that Jenny Mooney was instrumental in the gestation of, and my other writerly friends, Jan Stumbles and Gabrielle Daly. I chose not to read the prose, which is at the front of the book, what is the story, but to read, I don't think I could do it justice in the short time that I'd had, so I thought I'd just read you 3 poems I wrote after Jason died, and it was the winter after his death. If I had aborted you, what would you have missed? Not hitting a 6 or making a century? Pushing your brothers in that billy cart you made? Flying high on that stuff you used to smoke? Demons who set up camp in your head? Loyalty of a mate who followed you to the end and beyond? Fishing off rocks that wire a river? Legs entwined in your lovers? Essendon winning a premiership? The taste of beer and love? Smell of seasons and manure? A steel rod in your leg? A dutiful father? Disappointment, frustration, alcoholism? A stepfather who tried so hard, but still he came out wrong. A grandfather who couldn't understand. Uncles who got you plastered when you turned 18. Hitting the jackpot at the pokies. Cleaning my stove. Giggling with your brothers. Making the best sausage rolls. Nearly drowning in the spa at your 21st. But most of all, you would have missed me. The second, somebody laughing over there, good on you. That's my sister-in-law, Bernice, good. This one is entitled The Posse. Send out the posse, for she's lost her son and grief lips at her heels. Boiling blisters that dry into scabs, until the nipping grief erupts again and again. She sometimes sees him, her eldest, on a railway station, in a queue, even in identikit pictures. She scans sunsets, peers into mist, keeps windows clean. She might miss him. A lonely business is searching. It's like she's standing on the stern of a ship, stinging salt water and westerly sun, a necessary punishment, as she scans the horizon with binocular eyes. His bushy eyebrows stare back. Ah, it's only arcing dolphins. Then the sun deceives, the way it sears a cloud into golden curls like when he was born. Waves tantalise her ankles. A conscious taste of oblivion. She could easily fall into the blueness that matches his eyes. But his eyes were brown. See, that's why she must never stop searching. Must keep seeing his face so she doesn't forget, for she is the posse. And a final reading, which will be apparent where I am at the time of writing this, and it's entitled This Place. In this damn place, a bumblebee spins its wings, and a toy windmill goes berserk. In this place, my heart heaves, desperate to join you. I come alone now to this place, just me and my shadow, which grows shorter as I linger. I don't cry here in this place, but coming to and going from, tears fill the sockets of my sorrow. In this place where flowers droop at headrests, I sit on your blanket of grass, no flowers, just unspoken words that clench my gut and jam my heart. Over there, Mrs. de Serres has erected a wooden bench in loving memory. Still I sit on the wet grass as close as possible. You have no wooden bench, no flowers. The least I could do is give you my tears to keep the grass green. Perhaps when I've written your words, I'll let you see my tears. I've lost my pace, but it doesn't matter. Can I, before passing you back to Megan to conclude the official part of the ceremony, or the night, can I ask you to raise your glass and take a big gulp as my son Jason would do and drink to Jason and his wonderful memory. Thank you.
I'm going to read actually a couple of poems as well. I actually hadn't intended to do this, but I think they're quite important, and I want Janis to stay here on. And I hope I actually do them justice. The one, Clay, was actually something I read the end of the book this afternoon at 5:15 actually. And Clay was something that appeared right at the end, the prose. Clay, you must remember, he says, Clay has feelings. His hands cup an imaginary bowl. Clay remembers. That's why it cracks when you fire it. As you mould the bowl, you must apply enormous pressure, over and over, to make the clay forget. Even if I'm to crack, no hands will ever make me forget. And the forward to the book that we're about to launch. If, like the apricot tree, you'd been heretofore mature, you wouldn't have missed out on listening to Ackervilk and the scratched LP that I found at the garage sale. Not that you'd appreciate old Acker, still you'd listen. How else would you know the difference between cool and uncool? Just like having had you, I'm able to know the difference between good and bad love. Thank you. And on those words, I really actually commend the book, having read it. I've been fortunate to have it for a week now. It actually has made me cry. It's made me laugh. It's made me incredibly proud, and I've got to tell you a bit of history to this. Janis sent me a very thick volume of poetry, I think probably 5 years ago now. That poetry appeared again a year and a half ago when I found it amongst a pile of papers somebody had stashed very neatly in one of my cupboards in the office. It had been put there for me to go back and do some work with. Well, the work never happened. It was a book of poetry, stuck with a whole pile of stamps for me to actually send back a copy of the published document, because we had a newsletter and that poetry was to be included in the newsletter. It never happened, and I nearly died. What do I do with it? Do I hide it? Do I tear it up? Do I throw it away? Do I get rid of it somehow? I'm so embarrassed. I thought the only thing to do with this is when I'd read the poetry was to send it back and say we haven't done anything with it. I can only apologise. But I'm delighted because some of those poems actually appear in this book. The book published. Thank you. I'm actually wanting to commend to you the book, Living Death, and I think to formally launch it. And thank Janis so much for your work.
Can I have a drink now?
This is just a record for Heath and Adam.
Very emotional.
Hey?
Very emotional.
Yeah.
G'day. Oh, g'day, yeah, you go.
Hey, you there?
Oh, pardon. Oh, I can't even see myself.
Yeah, here, quickly over here. Yeah, hang on, let's go, hang on.
Piss off. This is one for an excellent night, Margaret. Great night, boys. We'll catch you in April. April?
Yeah. Did you actually say anything with your nose? There we go.
Okay. Hello, Jan.
I'm sneaking out for a
Oh, no,
smoke.
right.
Yay!
It's only there.
Congratulations, Janis.
I've got you before, I'll do it
Yeah, you
again.
did. That one, mate. Well done.
Who's this for?
For your
Sister?
sister. A record.
She got a good turner.
Could have been free beer and a free book. What's my dog?
How's your drink? Good, thanks. Okay. You're right. Big? I think it sounds
Yeah, I'm going to get stuck into it.
Hey, what's happened there?
Muscle.
I'm going to say during the reading. That's a name I used to write in Craig Street. When the windows out the back fogged up, I'd go and write Janis Tait. I'd practice my signature on. Never knew I'd be giving it away for nothing. Hello, Lauren and Beck. Hello, this line so long. This is like being at a festival.
I was actually here to say one for Nick and I and one for Nicole.
For Nicole?
Yeah, she passed her. She wish she could have been for the night, but she got filled up at work and she asked me to grab her. So she
It's a record.
a record.
That's good. Record.
Got all her friends here. Sorry, Jan. I couldn't resist. Well, at least I did laugh during her poem. Jason in that bar. I can picture the photograph.
We got him there.
Jason with his legs up in the air.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, him and Glenn.
It's a record that you were here, you see.
You're doing a wonderful job, Peter. Very well done.
You're not at finance.
You'll have to shoot me because no one's shot me yet.
Oh,
How do I do that? Can you see me?
No,
Am I looking good enough?
can't see it. You're not. Go around this way to the light.
Yeah. Yeah, look at yeah.
You're
You can
not
move
at
that.
place.
Hey?
You know what?
What's that?
What a shame it's finance is on tonight.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's better.
Now, Adam and Heath, your mum's had a great night and she's going to have a terrific night. We'll probably go and get her pissed.
Okay.
Okay.
It's bye from him and it's good night from him.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Still going?
Yeah, I just let it roll. Just let it go. There we go. Right doing this silly stuff.
And we often have other guns. And this is age where we wanted to show this one. Could do is this unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, it's good enough.
Ben. That's all right, no worries. You'd be surprised how many.
Happy Peter's in New York.
What happened?
Oh, I don't know. You
What happened?
just walk in front of me. It's okay. I'm doing a very important job here. Thanks, Mom. Very important job, and you just walk straight through.
No? Okay. You're not going yet. You're going, are you?
No, we don't do.
No, you're going to eat. What are you doing, Peter Tait? Get the thing off me.
Right into the lunatics. You're writing another novel. You're writing another novel on the book.
Thank you, guys. These are hands. They really are. I can't believe it.
Oh, hang on. Here we go. I'll have a shot.
Get out now. Too late. Too late. Get out.
Oh, bugger.
Quickly, Peter. Here's the cream curry.
That's the what?
White spread.
Colleen McCullough. Isn't she like Colleen McCullough? I know. Colleen, can you teach me how to write?
Isn't she a bad woman that lives on an
Thanks, Jane.
I don't know why I wrote that. I don't know why I wrote that.
Yeah, but it's so
True, that's but you can sell it on eBay one day. Thank you. Thanks, man. Hi guys, thank you.
Congratulations.
I haven't seen you for years, Dukes. How are you going?
Good, good.
Oh, so nice of you to come. Oh, thank you. Dearest.
Very good effort.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was a hard sell, but important to get it out there. Dukes, D-O-O-K-S.
D-U-K-S. They call me D-U-K-S.
Oh, it's in the juice, has it?
What do you want, Luco? Dukes. And right from Freck.
Love, the girl you admired. through the bathroom, keyhole at... What's the street? 47 Jesse Street.
It wasn't me, but that'll do. That'll be nice.
eBay, I'll give you an eBay. You've got to be original.
Thanks very much. Fantastic.
On your team. Loved your poems too. Oh, well, it's bullshit. That's what I did. But no.
Tenant Moira.
Well, it's actually Moy's making a CD. So you'll have to be so next month, she's her own music she's put together.
Send me an invite.
So I will. So you'll have to come to that too.
Oh, absolutely. Moy's, M-O-I-S.
M-O-Y is more M-O-Y, yeah.
Here you go, Marcy.
That's great effort, Janis. How long did it take? How long was it?
How are you?
Good, how are
There you go. Now you're on the record.
Doing a grand job too.
Thank you, Peter. Now, did you hear the joke about the couple who were sitting at the breakfast table and very old, and the guy turned and says, Martha, whatever's happened to our sex relations? And she said, I don't know, I haven't had a Christmas card from them for ages. Hello, Tony. Sorry. Tell me when you want. Oh, yes, thanks, Mum.
This is for Mum. This is Honey Jeans.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, who's going to take the photo?
This is like...
Can you tell the boys in England there's a genetic connection here?
Yes, here.
The name of this person?
Heath and Adam in England. Hello, this is your mother. Jan Tait and I are actually physically related. We're related, all right? It's on the tree. Go to the Orkney Isles and look it up. Right, Rocky?
Blood cousins.
Isn't it amazing?
Oh, no.
This is Randy
I was just telling Nolene that I'm more related to you than Neil is.
I know.
It's weird, isn't it? It's a bit incestuous, isn't it?
Oh. I'll have to go to the toilet now.
Neil, taking the Jan. That one's ours.
You'll do as you're told. Come and get your photo taken with Jan. You can sell this on eBay one day. Now I know what famous people feel like. The paparazzi, I can't stand the paparazzi. Paparazzi. You're famous now. Cousin, did you work, my little cousin?
One for Julie.
Julie Keller.
You know.
Got in there about me?
No one's named.
Yeah, but
You read it, Glenn.
yeah,
You're in there, Glenn. You have to read it to find out where you are.
Everyone who is important to Jason is in there.
yeah, right now.
It's for Gail, is it? And you?
Yeah,
Glenn and Gail?
Gail's in there.
What, nude? Have you got naughty shots in there?
No.
At least, Jan, what you could have done for the family was free beer and a free book. Now, I mean, like, Dad's on the pension now. I mean, like, $3 for a pot. That's fucked.
It's all business. Nothing but nothing.
It's not.
Marcy, you've been patient with Vanessa.
Greg, here's the first Ben. Jack's taught me the first beer.
Oh, that's historical.
There's no way to buy it. happening in the bar.
You should have heard it.
What did you say?
I was buying the beers at the bar, and
Heath and Adam going to hear this.
yeah, I was buying the beers at the bar for you and me, and Mum comes up and she's like, "What are you doing?"
Dad needs to, what the hell do I have this on?
No, Ken, just hold that. It's going. Just don't worry.
Can you do this too?
Just do it. Just it's going. Right?
Okay.
It's a pretty photo, Rob.
This is how you walk around.
Come on, is he going to sit down or what? I can't sit down.
Sorry. Oh, sorry.